Well, you got to think about what you're interested in and what you know something about. Okay, so I'm going to pick this painting because it's one of my favorites. And then I got to figure out a goal. My goal is to inform my audience about the symbolism and mystery in this painting. And so after I figure out my goal, I'm going to write a thesis statement. Thesis is just a fancy word for your big idea. Your big idea is the encompassing plan for your speech. But you're going to state it in a way that's a declarative sentence, not a sentence like, so my thesis statement is XYZ, right? It's just like writing an English paper. So my thesis is, at first glance, the Arnolfini portrait is not very interesting, but once you understand the symbolism and mystery behind it, your perspective may be changed. Okay? So that's my thesis. I'm going to jot that down. For the purposes of time, I'm just going to kind of start the sentence. Now, it'd be very tempting to try to start from the very beginning and work on my introduction. I don't think that that's an effective way to do it, though, because how do you know how to start if you don't know what you're ending up with? And so the next thing you should do is come up with your main points. Main points are how you divide your speech, okay? And we do main points because it helps the audience follow what we're saying. So I'm going to have 3 main points. That's pretty typical for a speech this length. And basically, my first main point is going to be some background on the painting. My second main point, and these are Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, symbolism in the painting. And then Roman numeral 3, the people themselves, the Arnolfinis. Okay? So at this point, I need to go do some research. I have to have 3 credible sources that I'm going to pull from to add to my knowledge about this topic. And so I've looked up information from an art history book. I've looked up information from the State University of New York art website. And then I've looked up an article from a publication called Clearinghouse. Okay, so those are going to be my 3 sources. So under background, I'm going to start putting in some subpoints. So this was painted by a guy named Jan van Eyck. He painted it in 1434. It's oil on oak. Oops, if I could spell, that'd be really good. And it's like 62 by 83 centimeters in diameter. Okay, I got this information from another source I forgot to mention, the National Gallery, and that's the museum that houses the painting in London. So then I'm going to start looking at the symbolism within the painting. So if you kind of turn back to the picture, you're going to notice a couple of things. So the first thing that you notice is there's this man and this woman, and they are basically having their portrait made. And he has his shoes taken off here. I don't know if you can see that. But there's these clogs over here. This is painted in a Dutch region in Europe in the 1400s. So his wooden shoes are taken off, so his shoes are off. He has a little dog right here. There's a chandelier above, but there's only one candle in the chandelier, and it's lit with flame. There's some oranges on the windowsill. There's a mirror in the back. There's a little statue on the bedpost, and they're in the bedroom. Does anyone have any idea what any of these things might mean? Well, let's start with the shoes. In the 1400s, in Europe, people were very religious. That was your only option, right? You just are religious. In this instance, you are Catholic. There's no option. So when people take their shoes off, what does that remind you of from maybe an Old Testament Bible story? Okay, when people wash their feet. Yes. So Moses, when he approached the burning bush, he took his shoes off because what? He was on holy ground, right? And so his shoes are off because he's on holy ground. That chandelier with one candle lit in it represents the all-seeing eye of God looking over this event. The little dog represents loyalty. The oranges on the windowsill represent fertility. That little statue on the bedpost is St. Margaret, who's the patron saint of childbirth. And I'll get to the mirror in a little bit. So what are they doing in this painting? What's the symbolism mean? Okay, so they're a newly wedded couple. Loyalty. The dog means loyalty. They want a loyal marriage. He's petitioning God, they both are, for children. Does she look pregnant to you?
Yes.
Okay. She's not, but she wants to be. Right? The fertility, oranges. Patron saint of childbirth. So back in the 1400s, it was very difficult to not only conceive, but have children that were healthy and lived. And so they're asking God to bless them with children, healthy children. So the most interesting part about this painting is that mirror on the back wall. It's a convex mirror, which means that it bubbles outward. So in 1434, this guy paints a convex mirror in a very small painting that's about this by this. And so the mirror in itself reflects the back of this couple, and then it shows the painter in between the couple, and then it shows someone standing behind the painter's shoulder looking in from the doorway. It's amazing, and that little bitty detail, what all is in that mirror on the back wall. And then you see the knobs that come out from the mirror. Each one of those knobs has a circular medallion on the carved wooden frame of the mirror, and in each one of those medallions is a scene from the Passion of the Christ. So the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus. And each one of those little bitty knobs in that mirror frame. That's crazy. So obviously there's a lot of religious symbolism and some secular symbolism. And the whole goal is that they wanted this to be painted to petition God to bless them with a family. And so I would detail all of these things in my second main point, because in that second main point, I'm talking about symbolism. And so I'd start with the religious. And so just kind of sub-pointed out, you know, we got the shoes, we got the statue, we've got the mirror, and we've got the chandelier. Okay, so I got all this information from the State University of New York. I'm just going to put that in parentheses to keep track of it. Then I would talk about the secular or worldly symbols. So the little dog, the oranges, and I think that's it. Right? There's probably some more that I'm missing. And so we just want to go through and kind of work out the wording of this. I would try to work out the full sentences of this. And then the last thing that I would do is my third, well, not the last thing. The third point, I would start talking about who these people were. So the Arnolfinis were merchants. They were pretty wealthy. The mystery behind this is, was she actually pregnant? So I would talk about that. A lot of people say that she was pregnant, but National Gallery, they come back and say no, that she's not. But it was just a petition to become pregnant, okay? Yeah, this is pretty bad handwriting, so yes, sir.
We can cover that.
Yeah, in fact, I have a full sentence outline of this sample on Canvas. I'll show you where to access it. So I would fill in all the detail, and then I'd go back and finish out my intro and conclusion. So the intro has 3 statements in it. I kind of let you get by with a little easy intro for this last one, but your next intro needs 3 statements, and they're really easy. You need an attention getter, a thesis, and then a preview statement, okay? And so the preview statement is already there. I'm sorry. The thesis statement is already there, and we've already worked that out. The attention statement is a statement that what? You remember from last week? It gets the audience's attention. So it's something better than, hello, my name is Amanda, and I'm going to tell you about this painting, right? It's something a little bit more creative. And so I like to start with a quote, a rhetorical question. We'll have some good attention getters today, so you kind of know how to do this. But basically, my attention getter will probably be a rhetorical question. So, do you have a favorite painting, or have you ever stood in front of a famous work of art, or something like that, okay? So I'll probably just say, do you have a favorite painting? I've got my thesis statement already done, so I'm going to skip that step. And then my preview is really important. A preview is telling your audience what to look for in your speech. All it is a sentence that lists what your main points are. So it literally will say something like, today I'm going to tell you about the background of this painting, the symbolism in the painting, and the people in the painting. And that's your preview statement. Why would we need to preview our main points for our audience?
So you know what's coming up.
So they know what's coming up. Because listening to a speech is an auditory activity. Sometimes there's a visual to go along with it, but when people are only listening to you, sometimes it's hard for them to follow you unless you're very clear and concise about what you're going to say. So you're literally going to say, today I'm going to discuss the background information, the symbolism of the painting, and the people in the painting. And then I'm going to transition right on into my first main point, deliver it, transition into second main point, third main point, and then have a conclusion. Now there's a lot of ways to do a conclusion. The conclusion typically has two jobs. It needs to summarize what you're going to say, and then it needs to provide a definite ending. I think we discussed this last week briefly. And so I have a trick that I use for my conclusions. I take what I did in my introduction, I flip it 180 degrees on its head, I make a few tweaks, and it becomes my conclusion. Okay? So if I take my introduction and flip it, the thing that was last in the introduction now becomes first in the conclusion. So I did preview my main points. Now I'm just going to summarize them. So now you know more about the background of this painting and the symbolism within it, along with some information about the people who are in the painting. So once again, I'm just reviewing for them what my main points are. I'm going to restate my thesis. I'm going to leave that in the middle. Maybe change a few words. Keep it simple, right? It was in the middle there. It's going to stay in the middle here. And then my last thing is, if I take that same strategy of taking the introduction and flipping it, then what comes first in the introduction would now be last in the conclusion. Well, what was first in my introduction is my attention getter. But I don't need to get people's attention at this point because I'm closing the speech out. So now I just need a definite ending. This definite ending might refer back to that opening statement. It doesn't have to, but it could. But basically, it's going to tie up the speech in a way that signifies to the audience that you're done without you having to say, and I'm done. Right? So what I typically do is I refer back to that opening sentence. And so my opening sentence was, do you have a favorite painting? And so I would play with that a little bit and make it my closing sentence. So now you know more about my favorite painting. The end, stop talking, right? Okay. So this is a very, very, very rough outline. You'll turn in one that's typed and that's full sentence and all worked out. You'll have a works cited at the end of your outline. We can talk about that momentarily. But basically, this is how you put together the outline. Okay? Thanks, Josh.